Welcome to Dead Folks Tales, a New Orleans-centric podcast exploring Southern Gothic stories, history, and hauntings, with your host, paranormal and fantasy author, Nola Nash. Find out more at nolanash.com. Now, let's talk about dead people.
And oh, do we have some dead people to talk to you about today? I am so excited to have my friend Willow with me, and we'll tell the story about how we met a little later. But first, I want folks to get to know you and what you do. So, Willow and Mechant, tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a professional psychic medium here in New Orleans, at least for now. Planning a move very soon. Continuing to be a psychic medium, of course. But yeah, I do a lot of things here. I've read for thousands of people here in New Orleans and who have visited here, and of course, virtually as well. I've been a psychic medium since the age of 3. Been reading tarot cards since the age of 15, so I could talk to the dead people that kept coming to me that I just had no idea what you're standing there for, staring at me. I don't know what you want. So that I better do something to figure this out. And somebody mentioned that, tarot cards are our communication tool. I thought that would be a great tool. So I worked with them. I actually read for the dead for about 14 years before I started reading for the living. I did not have enough life experience at 15 years old to read for the living. I knew that. So when I was like 29, I already had 4 kids. I was ready to, with that life experience, now I could help. So I've been doing that ever since. And I've added paranormal investigation in there. I've added all kinds of stuff, to my repertoire. So that's who I am.
And you're a Reiki master, right?
Yes. Life coach,
Reiki master.
All that.
Life coach. You are ordained. You perform weddings in Louisiana in the French Quarter.
I do.
And it's cemetery weddings. You've done some really cool weddings.
Yeah, I have. My favorite was the zombie wedding. I'm sure of that. I was a vampire minister at a zombie wedding, and I handed him the ring on a severed arm. How could you not make that? You can't make that
awesome.
Right? It was awesome. Yeah.
Only in New Orleans is that that's the wedding ceremony. That is fantastic. I love that. I love
that
it.
One
now
ended up on the news. So yeah.
Did it?
Yeah, and on Wacky Weddings. It was on a pilot show for Wacky Weddings out of LA. So yeah. It was crazy.
Fantastic. Yeah. I love that. And I love that it was you, because that is so you. Knowing you like I do. I was like, yep, that's a Willow wedding right there. Well, you and I met several years ago. We met down in New Orleans, and you were doing French Quarter tours at the time, and you had the tour company. Yep. And I did a tour with the tour guide, the ghost tour, the haunted French Quarter tour. And then you and I met up for a seance.
Yeah.
And that was such a cool experience. It was just me and you. And what an interesting night that was. It was just supposed to be the seance. We're going to do the seance and then let that be it. I think I left your house at 2 a.m. because we sat there talking for so long. I mean, it was like I'd known you forever. We sat there and we talked, but the equipment wouldn't work. The sound equipment, the video equipment, spirits kept shutting that off. It was like, no, we're not going to record this. We had new batteries. We changed batteries. We plugged in. It still would not stay on. Things that were working before wouldn't work anymore. It was really, really a neat experience. Did get to actually have some folks come through that were near and dear to me that we got to talk to. And that was a special experience too. And then we connected and we stayed friends. And I am so glad that we did, because we have gotten to have some fun adventures together.
Yes, we have.
And it has been so fun. I mean, I brought my daughter down to New Orleans with me one time. You read for her, and that was really cool. You went plantation touring with my mom and my other daughter and I. It's a family thing here with Willow. It really is. So the last time I was down there, and it was about this time last year, when I was down in New Orleans, it was Hurricane Delta was coming in, and Nola is the one who goes running to New Orleans ahead of a hurricane, knowing it's coming. But it was a really cool experience because it was so strange. I almost had the French Quarter to myself, which was kind of surreal. It did not feel like it was of this world to have that many wide open spaces with no tourists, no other people, businesses boarded up ahead of the hurricane. And here I am coming into the city. I mean, I've ridden out my share of hurricanes. They don't scare me that much. I mean, use caution. But this one, for some reason, I was just glad to be going down there. And I think it's because I have to have my dose of New Orleans or I think I go insane. You and I have talked about the fact that clearly in past lives, that was my home. That's it. I feel the city too much to not have been there at least one life before. And I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. I always say part of my soul is in that city and always will be. But we met up at the hotel I was staying at, and that was the Lafitte Guest House. And I have a picture of the room where I stayed in. Lafitte Guest House, for anyone who doesn't know, it was actually owned by one of the Lafitte brothers, who were, of course, part of the Barataria Pirates. Jean Lafitte being the most renowned, but he was not the one who owned this. It was not Jean Lafitte, it was Pierre Lafitte. Actually, Pierre Lafitte's woman. I don't think they ever got married. It was in her name because the Lafitte brothers learned very early on that if you want to launder money, you put it in the women's name and give them the property. People aren't going to come after them. But this is room 21 at Lafitte Guest House. And I want you to notice a couple of things as you're looking at this. If you're listening to the podcast, go find it on YouTube and take a look at the pictures here. If you look at Lafitte Guest House, they got some great pictures on there. But so I lifted this one because this was the room I stayed in. You'll notice where the bed is situated, where the windows are situated. There's a table kind of between the windows. We were over there for a while. There is a chandelier in the middle of the room. Remember that chandelier hanging from the ceiling, that's an important piece. And all around, there are various things that are plugged in. And as we were investigating, one of the first things we did was make sure that none of those things that were plugged in were going to interfere with anything that we did, or we unplugged them so that they were not interfering with anything that we were going to do. And we both knew that this was a very active location. Yeah. I had a friend, Ava Black. She's another author. She's out of New York. She stayed there, had some strange experiences, along with a friend of hers whose husband is a retired New Orleans police officer, and said he'd never stay in that hotel again. So he'd seen a lot of things, but never staying in that hotel again. So I knew from her experience that there was a lot of activity there, but knowing the history of the building and some of the history, that there would be a lot of activity there. You knew that as well. So you came prepared. We met up and you had your equipment with you. What were some of the things, just for the folks who don't know, that you brought with you?
I brought the SB7 spirit box so that we could communicate with them, and also 2 K2 meters, which they detect EMF, which is how we tested to make sure there wasn't any electric kind of interference. And of course our cameras, and our phones, because those are one of the best tools you can carry with you at all times.
They are. And you had the Necrophonics app on your phone as well. And we used this in both of the locations that we're going to talk about, which is a really cool thing. And basically it's a phone with no service, right?
Yeah, my phone has no service that it's on.
The phone with no service on it, but the app is on it. And so it's just simply connected to a Bluetooth speaker so that we could hear it louder, but you don't necessarily have to have the speaker. But the phone has no cell service, no Wi-Fi, it doesn't have that with it. So that's not actually causing anything. We're not picking up radio signals. We're not picking up, other people's phone. We're not picking up things like, nursery monitors, things of that nature.
Right.
So we're making sure that none of the things that we are picking up have to do with external electronics. We even tested the outlets, like the plugs, to make sure that they were not giving off anything that was going to set that off. And the way that we did that, for those of you who don't know what a K2 meter is, when it is receiving that signal, it starts at green. It can go all the way from yellow to red. And red, that's a strong signal. And boy, did we see a lot of red that night. A lot of red on that signal.
But not at the outlets.
Not at the outlets. And not at the TV, not at any of those things. And we put our phones on airplane mode so that we were not pulling anything out through our phones as well, because of course we're using our phones to record this. We're using our phones for video, and we didn't want to interfere with any of the equipment.
Right.
So that is kind of our due diligence that we needed to do first to make sure we were not impacting anything that we were going to be receiving as we're trying to investigate this location. So that's where we started. It helps to have a psychic medium with you when you want to communicate with the dead for many reasons. And one of those reasons for me was knowing the sensations that I was feeling, the things that I could actually tactily feel happening to me. If I hadn't had you there to explain that to me, I would have felt like I was like nuts. It's like, is this really, is this my nerves, or is this like the way I should feel about that? Things like prickling on my skin. It's almost like standing too close to a lightning bolt. It's kind of, when lightning strikes nearby, it's like that your hair stands up and it's that tingling in your skin. Those kinds of things were happening to me. And that, thanks to you, I knew was normal. That was part of that experience of being that close to spiritual activity. All right.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So the first thing we did was tried to, feel out the energy. Yeah. Right. So we went around the room, and there were a couple of spots that stood out to us. One of those spots was the table between the windows. And one of those spots, actually, weirdly, the center of the bed. And we found out soon why the center of the bed and that part of the bed was so strong. And you did a great job of asking questions. And I love the way that you ask those questions, because you're very patient with the spirit. So for the folks who don't know, who haven't really, we've seen the paranormal investigator shows, and some of those things, some shows are good and some shows are a bit, shall we say, theatrical in their approach.
Yeah.
But you have a really good kind of down to earth, pragmatic, it's almost like you're talking to another person, and you give them such respect that maybe that's why you don't go into it with the fear. You go into it with caution. You don't want to bring anything bad in. But I love your approach when you do this. And, tell the folks a little bit about why you approach the spirits in the way that you do.
Well, if somebody were to come into my home to visit, I would not want to be interrogated. And a lot of investigators, it sounds like they're interrogating the spirits. Who are you? Where were you from? How old are you? No, just talk to them like you're in their house, be polite. And it's like giving honey, if you work with honey, you're going to get more than if you work with vinegar. So I just talk to them because I talk to them the way I've been talking to spirits since I was a little girl. It's like, am I using the equipment? Yeah. Because I like the equipment because it allows other people who cannot hear what I hear to actually experience that. That's why I like the paranormal equipment. I love the spirit boxes. I like that app because you can hear what I'm hearing without it.
And that was helpful to me because you were picking up so much more just on your own, but all of that was giving me validation for some of the things that were maybe coming to me, like Sarah's name, kind of just out of nowhere. There was that, like loud, that name in my head. I knew that was her name. But if I hadn't had you validating those things, again, I would have thought I was crazy. So having all of that equipment and having you there is very helpful to others. So for you, it's just a conversation.
Yeah, it is. And I think more people would, that are investigating would get more out of it if they approached it that way. But a lot of people like to provoke. I never provoke. You never want to do that. Why would you? If somebody came into my house and provoked, I would kick them out. And I wouldn't talk to them. So why would you do that in their home? Because literally, if these spirits are in this building, they've made it their home. They didn't leave for a reason, So I try to be polite. And I think
that's the best way. And you've taught me something, years ago, you told me this, that, when I said, is it scary talking to, people are always afraid of ghosts and spirits and things, and they get really afraid. And you taught me, you said, the dead are no different dead than they were alive. So most people you run into alive are going to be nice people. Are there some bad people? Yes. But most people, kind of as a general rule, are, inherently good. And so they're not going to change that dramatically between life and death. So most spirits that are out there are there for non-nefarious reasons. I mean, are there some we don't want to invite in? Absolutely. Do we need to be careful when we're doing this? Absolutely. Because you don't know who you're dealing with at first.
Right.
But approaching them again, I mean, if you had a nasty spirit and you poke the bear, you can expect to be poked back, and not in a nice way.
Or scratched.
Or scratched. Yes. I mean, there are things that can happen to you. But we were dealing with very benign spirits, but they were actually very communicative, which was really great, and apparently strong enough to do some physical things for us, not just talk to us, which they did. And they answered your questions, because again, I think you asked them in such a great way that they enjoyed answering those questions for you. So we had two spirits that we were talking to. We had the little girl, which we learned later her name was Sarah. And then we had Phil or Philippe. That was the guy, and he told us, we asked both of them how they died. But we got to know them first. It wasn't just the first question. Who are you?
Right.
How'd you die? I mean, some of it was just simply, are you happy here? Can you tell us your name? What's going on? And there were conversational things, kind of getting to know them and letting them get to know us. We did ask them if they knew our names, because we hadn't said each other's name. We were careful about that, because that's a question that we're going to ask. So we hadn't said each other's names. We didn't need to. I mean, how many times do you call somebody by their name when it was just the two of us? We're not going to say, hey, Willow, come over here. So we hadn't said each other's names. But we did ask them if they knew our names, and they said our names. So they did know who we were. And so it was kind of like our way of introducing ourselves and getting to know them, like you would walking into anybody's house, which is a great first step, is to introduce yourself. Got to do that first. And we got some interesting results. Now, they were talky. They loved to chat. Sarah told us how she died. Do you remember how she told us she died?
I can't remember anymore. I talked to so many dead people.
You talked to so many dead people. We don't talk about dead folks' tales. Willow can just sit there and tell you everybody's. She said she was sick. And so we knew that she was one of the children at some point during one of the yellow fever outbreaks. The Lafitte guest house, the building itself, had been used as an orphanage for children whose parents had died of yellow fever. And of course, many of the children themselves died as well. And so Sarah is apparently one of those children. And so she died at that time. So she was sick, and Phil, or Philippe, he kind of said both. We were not real sure exactly what he wanted to be called. We kind of figured his name was Philippe, but he was kind of a modern dude and decided he wanted to be Phil. Kind of like we learned with Gilbert at Andrew, which we'll talk about in a little bit, because he wanted to be Gil. He wanted to be modern too. But Sarah died because she was sick, and Philippe, he fell at one point. And maybe it was during a renovation. Maybe he fell down the stairs. We don't really know. He didn't get specific on that one. But Sarah, man, she was a spunky little kid. Philippe was not as spunky. Although I did tell him in the morning, because I wasn't sure if he was still around when I was going to get in the shower. I was like, look, I'm going to get in the shower. Phil, you got to stay out here. It's like, you're not coming with me, buddy. Sorry. Don't know where you are, but it's not in that room. I'm not going in the shower.
Let me tell you, it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant when you're in the shower and they show up in it with you.
Oh, God. That's an experience I could do without. Clearly one you've had. Showering with spirits. That could be its own podcast.
Probably. Yeah.
Maybe start that one. But we talked to Sarah quite a bit. And Sarah, as a spunky little kid, I had brought her a doll, and I brought her a ball. And we were trying to get her to move those things. She didn't move those. But she did move the chandelier. Okay, Now remember I told you guys the chandelier in the middle of the room was something you wanted to keep your eye on as you were noticing that. Now, we do have video, and admittedly, I was really excited about this. And so my hands were like, we could see how much it was moving in the video. You're going, yeah, that's your phone. Okay, yes, some of it, the movement was my phone. But if you look really carefully and you're watching kind of the lines of the bricks behind the chandelier in the video, you can really see it was rocking. It was just swaying. Things to know kind of a due diligence thing to know when you're looking at this video. Because of Hurricane Delta, I was the only guest in the entire hotel. I'm the only idiot running into a hurricane. But the people who run it live in a back part of the house, a modern part of the house. So there was no one else in the hotel with me. And in fact, they gave me the code so that you and I could go get dinner later and come back in, because they were going to bed. They were shutting it down. So I'm the only one in that part of the building with you. So if there's, there was no one upstairs.
No.
The air conditioning was off. We checked the windows for drafts. There was nothing like that. So the chandelier moving, and it would stop and it would start, and really irregular things. It wasn't like an air conditioner upstairs making it, nothing like that. So here we go. And because there's audio on it, you'll hear us getting excited about the chandelier. But here's what happened. The chandelier is moving.
It was not moving before.
Can you move that a little bit more for us so that we can see it a little bit better?
There we go.
Right there at the end, you could really see it starting to sway. She picked it up just a little bit. Now, I will tell you that I woke up to that chandelier moving the next morning, too. I mean, it moved quite a bit. And I think that was her way of letting us know that she was there. That was something she was familiar with, it's in her space. And that was something that she could communicate with. We knew she was in the middle of the bed because we put that meter in the middle of the bed. We're like, somebody's sitting in the middle of the bed. And it makes sense. Little kid probably just plays on the bed a lot. I don't know. So there she was sitting in the middle of the bed. I will tell you too, because she was there and I kind of felt like, we'd gotten to know her. She followed me around the room. You remember the table that was between the windows? We're like, here she comes again. She played with my phone all night long. Once we finished this and I was getting ready to go to bed, she was doing all kinds of things to the phone. I would lay it down on the table. It would be on my home screen. I would go back to it. It's on my camera, or it's, music would start playing on my app, my Spotify app. It's like, okay, well, we're going to do this now. I was like, ooh, what's this thing? Like a little kid pushing all the buttons. That was kind of what it felt like to me, was like, this is a new toy. And it was kind of funny, but she clearly was enjoying the attention that she was being paid. Somebody had noticed her. And, as a mom, I kind of was treating her like the mom and telling her stories like, okay, Sarah, we're going to go to bed now. Time for bed. I'll tell you a story. And the chandelier starts to sway again as I decide to tell her the story. But I actually got up at one point in the night and I took the video with a flash on, just so I could see in the dark, but kind of looking for maybe anything that might show up. And so you will see little white lights that are kind of darting around, and one that comes straight out of the center of the screen in this one. So this is Sarah and whoever else is there letting me know they're there. Do you see that one come right out of the middle? It's like, whoop, there it is. We're here. Hi. And that was a very short clip of things that went on for quite a while. And it was just like that. And I was making sure there is no gnats, no bugs, no nothing. And you can tell the difference. It's not dust floating in the air because of the very deliberate way that it moves, right? Am I correct in kind of assuming?
It's a little different. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the movement. So our next trip, the light switch.
Oh, yeah.
The light switch. So we've done all of this. We've talked to dead people. I know there's dead people in my room. And we decided, okay, it's late. We're hungry. Let's see if we can find anything open to go eat. And not saying a word to you, Willow, I left the light on because I was like, I'm not walking back into this room in the dark. Like, we're just not going to do that.
Right.
And the lock on the door, I had the only key. I'm sure the owners have a second key, but they'd gone to bed. So it's a key, not a card. It's a key. And I'm the only one in the hotel. So I've got my key in the old lock. And we leave. And we go looking for dinner. We finally found a place open on Bourbon, sat on the balcony. We had a lovely meal. It was nice out
good.
there that
Yeah.
night. It was actually really nice. And we come back, put the code in, get in the door, go upstairs, open the door. The light is off. And
Yeah.
you said you left that light on.
Yeah, you
I
did.
sure did. I sure did. But we hadn't talked about it before. It was like I had just done it, but you noticed I was not leaving that room in the dark.
Yeah.
So the light was off. And so we decided, all right, she's playing tricks on us again. And it was just such a sweet spirit. I never felt any sense of dread, fear, discomfort, nothing.
No.
Nothing. Now, there's a slightly different feeling at our next location. And our next location was Woodland Plantation officially, but informally through time known as the Andre Plantation because of the Andre family who lived there. And Manuel Andre was a brutal plantation owner. And it is also the site of the beginning of the 1811 slave uprising. And there's become a lot more attention being paid to that uprising, thankfully, at some of the plantations that are down there. There is an exhibit, of course, at the house now. It is a museum, and John McCusker is a dear friend and a really great guy. And he let us do some exploring like no one else gets to do because the museum wasn't open yet. We had the house pretty much to ourselves. John was downstairs working, and then he had to leave for a while. And we literally had the entire haunted plantation to ourselves.
Yep.
Now we decided best place to start, the spookiest place to start, in the attic because that's where you go. And so we go up to the attic and we got to investigate there too. And we talked to Gil. And I loved his, what is your name? Gil.
So it was like clear.
It was like, Gil, like, this is who I am, like loud and clear. There was no messing around. It did not take us very long to get Gil talking either. He talked to us for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then we met Charles. Now, things you need to know about this family, folks. Manuel Andre was a plantation owner. Gilbert Andre was his son. Charles is the slave overseer who actually began the 1811 slave uprising by killing Gilbert. So the fact that we had both Gilbert's spirit there to talk to us and Charles's spirit there to talk to us was really cool to have kind of the two sides that should be warring and just angry at one another at the way that they've met their untimely ends. Because, of course, Charles was executed at the end of the uprising. And you would think it was executed by Gilbert's father, by Manuel.
Yeah.
You would think that they would be angry spirits. And while it didn't have quite the liveliness of Sarah and our little spirit, who ended up following me home, by the way. I mean, she actually was in the car messing with the air conditioner and things as we were driving she decided she liked technology. Technology is fun. We're going to play with that. Because she was messing with the air conditioning all the way up in the rental car to the plantation. So we knew we had her along for the ride. But you would think those two would not be getting along, and yet they did, which was an interesting story. So Gil was chatty. He was telling us about how he died, how he felt about being there at the house, how we asked him questions. And I love that you approach it this way because you admit that we are coming into their space. They've held that space for 200 years. So we were intruders. And anyone who's coming into that house is intruders. It was their home originally.
Yes.
And I love that you asked, how do you feel about people being here? And how do you feel about the house being turned into a museum? And they seemed okay with it, which was kind of cool. And even mentioned that they like John. They said John's name. And it was funny because we heard his name a lot, like John. Like it's like we get a lot of John and we like John. So John was glad to hear that too. He said, well, good, I'm glad they like me because I'm here all the time. And you asked an interesting question because you realized they were not angry with one another. And so you asked them how they felt about each other now? And it was interesting that you chose to ask that question. Why do you think you chose to ask that question? Is that just, do questions just come to you, or are you kind of led to those questions?
Because I know from the spirits that I've talked to that once they go into the light, they don't have that human anger, resentment, any of that. It's like washed away. And I wanted to know, first off, did they go into the light and come back? Are they still holding on to those human emotions? But I don't think they did.
They didn't. They seemed to be okay with one another. It was almost like, I almost said the worst possible thing. You're talking about me derailing the show, because it's usually me that goes off I almost said it's almost like they buried the hatchet. The worst metaphor I could have chosen.
Because literally,
Charles
Nola
killed Gilbert with an axe. Oh God, Nola. Think
he
about
did
your
bury
words,
the hatchet.
lady. That buried the hatchet twice in a horrible way.
Like in his chest, wasn't it? Like
yeah, it was brutal. I mean, basically killed him in his chest, and then like we're trying to chop his limbs off. It was horrible.
Yeah, it was bad.
But bad metaphor. But it seemed like they had at least put all of that, it was like, okay, as spirits, we see the bigger picture. We kind of see that, there was a lot at play here. There was maybe a lot of things in society that put them in the positions that they were in, a lot of things that they could control, a lot of things they could not control. And maybe being outside of the situation the way that they are now, it seemed that they had kind of come to terms with what had happened and one another. And they seemed to be perfectly fine sharing that space. And there were others there were others that we talked to that seemed to be more in the background. There was a woman who spoke French. We couldn't understand her. And some other things that were just really fascinating kind of as we were talking to them. But it was such a cool experience to be able to have those conversations. And then we decided to go outside to the spot behind the house, or actually what would have been the front of the house, where Charles was executed. And Charles was brutally executed. He was drawn and quartered and then burned. And I mean, horribly executed. So we thought, okay, well, we're going to go out here and we ought to get some good stuff. Funny thing is the house is right off of a pretty busy road. And so there was a lot of road noise, and it was hard to hear anything that we were getting. And I'm sure they were talking to us. It was just really hard to hear. Yeah. But we went inside. And this is where 200-year-old flirt comes in. Hang on, you froze up there for a second, Willow. Oh, she's frozen, so I'll tell you what happened.
We're going inside, or we let them know.
Yep, as we're going inside, we're like, we're going to go in. And he says, ladies, like after you. He was just so charming. It's like, and it was so clear. So clear.
Yeah.
Ladies.
Yeah, it was.
It's like, hello.
We're like, oh.
Been a while since you've had some company, Charles. I mean, it was just the coolest thing, because it was like, I will let you go in first after you. I mean, it was
right.
So charming.
And it was such a deep.
Yes. Its deep resonance to his voice was awesome.
Deep voice.
Mm-hmm. Deep resonating, just ladies. It was very flirtatious. It was kind of fun. So we had some pretty cool experiences doing that. And I want you to come back on this show. I would love to have you back. I know you're not sure about your schedule next week, but we're going to talk about the Myrtles Plantation next week. I will be talking about the Myrtles if nothing else, but I would love for you, if you can come next week and share that experience that you had with me, then that's awesome. If not, I'm going to get you on another night, because I want you to share that story. And I would love for you to tell me about some other investigations that you've done, or just some interesting experiences that you've had as a medium, people that you've gotten to communicate with, just some of the just general experiences that you've had. I would love for you to tell me about when you were a little kid, how you actually first met some of the voodoo loa and where they were in there. Oh, and that was such a cool story. I'm not going to say anymore because I want you to share that story. I love that story. It's like, Ooh. Yeah, so that was an interesting tale there.
Yeah,
So we
it
will
was,
talk
yeah,
about
an
that
interesting
and kind
day.
of yes, it was for a little kid. An interesting day for
Yeah,
a little kid.
like 5 or
Hmm.
6 years old. Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, my children, I've had a couple of mine that have had some experiences where they would not have known. I've not given them the information that they would need for them to come out with the stuff that they have when they were little. And I do think that
Right.
children are kind of a bit more of an open door, but then we're taught to close that door. So I
Yeah.
love that your door has remained open and that you have actually learned to work with that as opposed to going, whoop, nope, that's weird, and shutting it down. So I want you to
Yeah.
come back and tell some more of those stories, but to be able to talk about Gil and Charles and Sarah
Oh,
and
yeah.
Bill, all of our friends that we made on that weekend, around Hurricane Delta. And I don't know, maybe the hurricane was just stirring up some energy and it was kind of putting some things to work. I mean, do you feel like that can happen? Does the
Yeah.
weather sometime impact that?
Yes, the weather does. Floods, I find when I've had, where I live now, my house is now raised, but I've had 5 floods in the
Ugh.
house when I moved in because it's still on the ground level. And
Mm-hmm.
I would have poltergeist activity after every flood. So
Oh,
it
freak.
just, yeah, like really strong stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, tell the folks where they can find you. You've got some fun stuff that you do on Facebook, I know. So let the folks know how they can get in touch with you should they want to take advantage of your services, because you do offer readings in a variety of ways, not just in
I
person in the French
do.
Quarter.
Right. No, I'm actually doing FaceTime, Skype, uh, phone readings, in person, of course. I'm working on other types of virtual ways. I'm looking at Zoom now. I'm just
Yeah.
all kinds of ways to do this. But you can also find all my information at my name, willowlaymechant.com.
It's
So
in
my
the
website
description of the
is there.
podcast. So anywhere that the
And
podcast,
yeah,
find the description. The link is there.
and you can find me on Facebook. I have the Divine Source Spiritual Center and also Willow Mechant Spiritual Services.
And you can find everything that she offers on there and how to contact you as well. Thank you so much for joining me tonight and telling stories. I love hanging out with you. I hate being this far away so that we can't just hang out all the
I
time.
know. Well, maybe when I move, I'll be a little closer. I'm not sure.
Maybe just a different trajectory. Oh, where'd she go? We lost her. Oh, I hate it when that happens. We were having a tough signal time, but we're super appreciative of Willow joining us tonight, and we're going to go ahead and close it out. We've gone a little long, but I think it was worth it. Oh, there she is. Let's add her back in, see if we can join her. There. Oops, she's trying. There she is. Hey, we were
Like
going to
it
wrap up.
just like shut down.
You were just gone.
Spirits,
Yes.
stop.
Like, no, we were trying to close out the show. This happens when we get together.
I'm telling you. And I am in my seance room. So,
Oh, well.
I got 2 portal mirrors, it's a little busy.
Your room is so cool, by the way. I love all of your seance room is just the best. So, folks, get in touch with Willow. The link to her website is in the description of the podcast, wherever we are, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, or any of the major podcast platforms. Go check her out. Get to know Willow. You will not be sorry. She has got some great insight, whether you are needing to speak to a loved one, or if you just would like a tarot reading like no other, where you get some great insight and some life coaching as well. Because that's another thing I love about the way that you read cards, is it's not just, this is what the cards say. It's more, this is a possibility. And this is
Well, it's
some
also
advice what to do with
channeled.
that.
Yeah, my
Oh, that's right.
readings
You
are
do channel.
channeled. My readings are channeled. My spirit guides connect with your spirit guides, and I get the messages. And that's what I share.
So good. They are so, so good. So good. All right, folks, thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you had a great time. Leave us some comments. Let us know your thoughts about those videos that we shared and some experiences. If you've had your own experiences, put those in the comments as well. We love to hear them. And we will see you next time on Dead Folks Tales. Thanks for joining us.
Dead Folks Tales is a copywritten podcast of Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. Special thanks to producer Roman Suritin and executive producer Pam Stack. Join us next week for another episode of Dead Folks Tales.